guess it's time for us to start the program. Thank you very much. I can see people are flocking in numbers, and we really appreciate that. But let me start by saying good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Business Talk hosted by Black Management Forum in partnership with Limpopo Chamber of Commerce and Industry. My name is Paul Motse, the BMF Provincial Chairperson in Limpopo, and I welcome you. One of the things that was making headlines in the afternoon was Gauteng Premier David Makhura when he was giving an update on the provincial government economic reconstruction and recovery plan in response to the unrest. He said that the preliminary estimate shows that the damage caused by the recent unrest to the province economic amount to 3.5 billion rands. He says the figure relates to the damage caused to businesses and the stock that has been looted. These figures do not include uninsured township businesses. Just by listening to him, we then realize that the damage is very serious and very deep. Be that as it may, we do not fold our arms and do nothing. We still need to think about ways to recover from this and begin to work of reconstructing the economy. At the beginning of the unrest, somebody sent me an electronic flyer with this information, and I quote, "Black people cannot rule themselves because they don't have the brains and mental capacity to govern a society. Give them guns, they will kill themselves. Give them power, they will steal all the government's money. Give them independence and power, they will use it to promote tribalism, ethnicity, hatred, killings, and wars," close quote. When he sent it to me, he captured, do we really want to prove this statement true? It must be noted that I totally disagree with this sentiment. However, it made me realize that there are many perceptions surrounding the recent riots and looting that our country is experiencing. It made me realize that the way I, as an entrepreneur, perceive it is totally different from how my employees perceive it, the way politicians views in a different, ordinary citizens, and so on, the other views of other people. There are lots of perceptions indeed, but what is undeniable is that the fact that everyone sees and feels the inexorable impact that these riots and looting brought to our economy, regardless of what the motive is. The biggest question is, was it worth it? Did it solve anything? It just added to our distress. I hope our guests will help us with this. What makes it even more unfortunate is that it happens at a time when our economy is not in its strongest point. This occurs as we are still trying to recover from the ramification of COVID-19, which brings us to the gathering that we are having today. The BMF could not just hold our arms and watch from a distance. And so we invite the most relevant people to come and shed a brighter light on the impact that these riots have on our economy. We have invited industry players and the Limpopo provincial government to help us understand the inexorable impact of riots and looting in the economy. Today's program will be interactive in nature. However, I will first afford each of our esteemed guests an opportunity to address us and indicate on the program and encourage all of us to listen attentively and engage meaningfully. So ladies and gentlemen, allow me to move to the acknowledgement of guests before I can introduce our first speaker. I would like to acknowledge that in attendance, we've got the Honorable MEC, who is the MEC of Lidet in Limpopo. I would also like to acknowledge Mr. Jaleni, who is the Limpopo Chamber of Commerce President. I would also like to acknowledge Ms. Esek Chumangotwa, who is the board member of Black Management Forum and also a board member of INSIGA Impact Fund. I would also want to acknowledge Mr. Ndona, who is a chartered accountant and a board member at Abasa. I would also want to acknowledge, in absentia, Dr. Mguna, who was supposed to be with us today but could not be here. I would want to take this opportunity also to acknowledge other people who are very important, who are part of the attendees today. The parliamentary, the chairperson of the portfolio committee in Parliament, Ms. Faith Mutambi, is here with us. I would also want to take this opportunity to acknowledge the president of the BMF to be part of this session as well. I would also want to take this opportunity to welcome all the other people who are representing different provinces from your Eastern Cape, your Free State, as well as your Northwest. They are also here, and Mpumalanga is also part of us today. We want to thank you guys for. I'm going to take this opportunity to give to the MEC to be the one who's going to be able to start as the first guest speaker, to allude to us as the government to say, what are they saying about the topic that we have already mentioned? MEC, I'm giving you this opportunity. Over to you, sir.
The President of Limpopo Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Zileni, members of Limpopo Chamber present here, members of the National Union of Municipal Chambers of Commerce and Industry, members of Black Management Forum, acting HOD, Ndate Matozi Ratumbu, and all government officials present in this meeting, distinguished guests, friends, and media at large. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to take this opportunity to pass my appreciation to the Limpopo Chamber of Commerce and Industry in inviting us to this esteemed occasion. In an occasion like this, it's very important to quote the following by Mr. Ernest Hemingway. Never think that war, no matter how necessary, nor how justified, it is not a crime. The United States spent more than $4 trillion, or 36% of its GDP, fighting World War II. More than 400,000 soldiers were killed in the conflict to defeat Nazi Germany, Italy, and Japanese Empire. Apartheid imposed heavy burden on most South Africans. The economic gap between the wealthy few, nearly all of whom were whites, and the poor masses, virtually all of whom were blacks, colored, and Indian, were larger than in any country in the world. While whites generally lived well, Indians, coloreds, and especially blacks suffered from widespread poverty, malnutrition, and disease. Most South Africans struggled daily for survival, despite the growth of the national economy. Program Director. Mainly two of the largest provinces, contributing almost 50% to our national economy, were affected by the recent disruption. Gauteng accounts for roughly 34% of the national GDP, while KZN contributes around 16%. The unrest affected the supply side of the economy via stores, roads, damage to infrastructure, inventory losses, and uncertainty around job security. Our economy is open and highly integrated. It is expected that the disruption to roads and port logistics will have a negative impact to Limpopo and other provinces in the country. The President, Mr. Cyril Matamela Ramaphosa, said the riots were an attempt to hijack South Africa's democracy. We are glad to report that Limpopo was to a larger extent not affected by the chaotic, ill-informed endeavor. We find ourselves now being expected to fight a battle on two fronts against the cohesion of those who have sought to create instability and chaos, and against the deadly coronavirus in an attempt to bring back our economy. The Limpopo province, under the leadership of Premier Stanley Chukuma Tabata, has recently been applauded for taking the lead in the dispensation of dispensing of a vaccine rollout. We applaud and appreciate the support and the leadership of the Premier. As we pick up the pieces of what the past week have been in the country, we have identified several action areas. Firstly, we have to contain the spread of coronavirus and limit its impact on economic activity. Secondly, we need to ensure that peace and stability is maintained throughout the province and there are no incidents of violence. Thirdly, we need to accelerate the implementation of Limpopo Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan to rebuild our country, create employment, and drive inclusive growth. Fourthly, the President and the National Department officials are tallying cause of unrest and developing response and relief measures to affected business. The Limpopo Department of Economic Development, Environment and Tourism will be working closely with National Department and other stakeholders to see on how affected business in the province will be affected. In an endeavor to quell unrest in the mining areas in the province, the Premier has instructed that we convene a mining endeavor. The department has begun engagement with individual mine, traditional leaders, and other stakeholders in preparation for the mining endeavor. The province will further host the Limpopo Tourism Lekgotla and Limpopo Conference during the month of August and September 2021. This is to ensure that post-COVID-19 third wave, we should have created an environment for job creation in our province. I say this because government relies on private sector to create jobs. Program Director, we are now at alert level 3 and some restrictions have been eased. We need to continue to do everything in our means as business, as government, to contain the spread of the virus. The latest figures suggest that we are largely at the peak of the third wave of infection, and the rate of infection is showing sign of decline. The competitiveness and profitability of our business will be realized only when we have contained the spread of the virus and restriction on gatherings, movement, and curfews are eased. Once again, we would like to thank taxi drivers and taxi owners, private securities, companies, ordinary citizens, all and sundry, who have stepped up to protect businesses and communities in our beloved province. It is exciting to participate in the process of engaging with key business stakeholders in our attempt to arrive at a program of action and long-lasting solution as a response to recent unrest. I'm positive this business talk has the capacity to produce solutions which will bring calm, stability, and help affected businesses to rebuild. Lastly, I would like to take this opportunity to thank South Africans who have demonstrated their commitment to democratic government and oppose violence and criminality that sought to destabilize our economy in recent weeks. Together, we can indeed do more. Nakensa, Rolebu, Realebu, Bayadanki. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, MEC, for those words of encouragement. This government, it's always nice to hear what does the government say about what is actually happening on the ground. And we are glad that the government came to the party. And every time when we're looking for you, MEC, you always avail yourself. And we really appreciate that aspect as the BMF and also as and we really want to engage with you. Now we know what the government stands for and what the government wants to achieve. I'm going to take this opportunity to give it to the next speaker. The reason why I'm giving it to the next speaker is because I want him to talk to the fact that I want him to talk about the experiences of entrepreneurs and plans to rebuild the economy. Because sometimes it's a different story when you are on the other side. So it's always nicer to hear from the entrepreneurs to say what is it that they have experienced in actual sense directly when it comes to this thing that is happened and the unrest that has happened in the country. I'm going to take this opportunity to give it to Mr. Jaleni to add to that, and also for him to be able to chamber is saying about the whole thing.
Acknowledged already by the chairperson. As indicated, I am Albert Jeleni. And of course, really, I am here to talk on the experiences of business. And that is because as the Chamber of Business, we are here to represent the businesses themselves. And we therefore stand for unity and harmony amongst businesses, the business people themselves and the environment. And of course, the moment there is unrest, it affects us the most because what we stand for is unity and harmony. And what at times is often misunderstood is what it means to have a business, or what does a business mean? We look at it as an entity that does not have life, but behind that business, there is a man or a woman who is a brother, a sister, a father, a mother, has got feelings, and anything that happens to that business that they worked so hard to establish tends to hurt them emotionally, financially, and in other ways. But most importantly, it tends to affect their families as well. And I think this is critical to understand that when we see a business establishment, there is a family behind that with feelings. They have worked so hard to establish such a business. And for those who have got pets at home, it might be a dog or a cat that we have grown so fond of so much, which you not only to replace with another one. Us, when we look at our businesses as entrepreneurs, we love them. And when we saw our businesses in fire, it felt like we ourselves were being burned in that process. When we saw our businesses being looted, it felt like we ourselves were being violated. Allow me to indicate, colleagues, that it's very critical to understand that we represent the individuals, we represent their businesses, we represent the environment, the economy itself, and we seek to collaborate with government to make sure that we have got peace. And at the end of the day, what we desire is to have a conducive environment. And at times, different people argue in terms of what is a conducive environment. But for us, really, if we can be in a situation where we're able to meet the needs of the community while we have satisfied our need to make money, we will say that we have got a conducive environment. I'm saying this because what we saw in the last 3 to 4 weeks is going against what we call conducive environment for us to be able to operate. And what is so sad, Honorable MEC, and I want to make a comparison, you know, we vote people in and we also employ people in. As entrepreneurs, we don't get to be voted in. So basically, for me to run my company or to come with an idea, I don't get to be voted in. And it might therefore mean that if we were to lose any of the entrepreneurs that we have today, those skills are gone for good. We cannot replace that person with another one. And that is the challenge in the entrepreneur space. So whatever happened now, if it results in discouraging anyone else out of the market, it actually becomes detrimental to the economy. There is no way we can vote such a person in. The business itself, by the way, we do not just vote or come together and say we're establishing a business. Somebody comes up with an idea and it takes years to build. A minimum of 5 years for a business to be sustainable. And if such a business is destroyed, you cannot just replace it overnight. No matter how much you throw back into that business, you still need the emotions behind, the drive behind to make it to be. What we have seen happening in the last 3 weeks actually took away momentum in the economy. If we were to put it differently, if we understand how an engine stalls, it had made the economy to stall simply because certain aspects of our economy were being attacked in such a way that money couldn't circulate. Colleagues, I'm saying this way so that we understand that what happened affected much. And I believe we wouldn't be wrong to say that what happened can be equated to genocide against businesses, because people really went out, or those who planned that really went out to make sure that they destroy our businesses, they destroy our spirits, they affect our families, they affect the communities around, they affect the employees who to us are like our families. And at this point in time, we cannot afford to keep them. Businesses in a country most of the time are really innocent, just like women and children in a country that has got war. Businesses are not geared to be able to defend themselves. Hence, you'll find very fewer businesses that have got armed security guards around. It is because we tend to believe that it is unlikely, or there shouldn't be a reason for businesses to be attacked at all. Businesses are well regulated. At most of the time, they really function within the regulations. And on the other hand, customers are protected. And therefore, we do not imagine at all that customers will turn on us as businesses. But even if maybe there was a possibility or a chance, we see our customers as people who support us. We wouldn't feel comfortable to have to be armed or servicing our customers. And therefore, it was very easy for us and painful to be attacked by people that we saw as the beneficiaries of our businesses, the people who are the customers. Actually, it's like a board harm itself, fitting harm on itself. That's how it felt when we experienced the looting, the burning, and everything else that followed. And colleagues, what resulted is the impact financially. Many people talking about the fact that some companies have insurance. While yes, we may have insurance in some instances, but the financial impact of that, it's something that is going to be with us for a long time. Some of the people are likely to even take a decision to go out of business. In actual fact, we have to now encourage each other to go back to business because we are also seeing it as a risk. Another impact that we have experienced is psychological, as I've indicated even at the beginning. Having to watch what you worked for so hard, something that you build with love, having to be trashed in minutes, just like that, having to be ripped apart. The event today is being organized by the Black Management Forum, an organization that is pro-transformation. One of the things that they will agree with me is the fact that what happened undid transformation itself. From the career point of view and from the ocean view. What do we do with the CEO of the mall who has been working there for years? Are we going to be able to place him on another mall? Of course not. Are we going to build the mall overnight? Of course not. Is he going to wait for the mall to be built? Of course not. So at this point in time, that CEO, even if they were to tell him that they're going to pay him, he has been worked out of a job. It's not money that he needed. It was a career that he needed. The owners of the malls and stores in that particular portion, they are out of the market. Those who work so hard to make sure that they can own a bit of an economy towards transformation, they've been worked out. The many employees have been worked out. So in terms of transformation, colleagues, we have been worked out so much. This does not only affect us, those who are now in business, but it also affects those who are watching, those who are looking at us as them are afraid to take the risks that we took to be with. So if I were to say, colleagues, I would say that what happened destroyed some of the seed that we can never recover. Now, I also remember some of the people will then say, fortunately in Limpopo, we are not affected. I am glad the MEC articulated the fact that we are affected. Yes, in terms of the looting, we are not affected, or at least not that much. But we live in what we call a global village. Anything that happens in one part of the country affects us so much. And I am aware of some of the national companies that have been affected in Gauteng or KZN are already thinking on how to cut their activities within our province. So indeed, we have been affected as Limpopo. And it was therefore critical that we have this discussion to need to be part of rebuilding, because this, if nothing is done, it's going to be with us for a long time. Now, colleagues, of course, we can talk about everything that has happened, but we also need to be able to diagnose what went wrong. While there are many things that we can say they went wrong, and some of them I wouldn't be competent to talk, one of the things that I observed went wrong is the lack of collaboration between government and private sector. I remember the number of calls that I will get during the time when it was happening from some of the associations, from the journalists, trying to understand what's happening and what are we doing ourselves as the business. And at that point in time, it was a confusion to say whose responsibility it is. You know, do we just rush in to protect the single business? Do we rush in to protect all the businesses at once? And we didn't have collaboration. Eventually, various stakeholders took to the streets themselves, took to the malls themselves to defend the malls. So in a way, they took matters into their own hands. And actually, they risked in so doing. Because on the one hand, in that defense, if they somebody, they were going to have to answer to that. So I think it's one area that we now need to work out the collaboration between government and private sector to say, if we have got situations like this, how do we deal with them? I've heard the MEC acknowledge some of the parties that played, in particular the Taxi Association. These are the associations or organizations that we must make sure they are well oiled at times. Just like the army, we need to make sure that we support them to stand. Thankfully in Limpopo, and thanks so much to the Honorable MEC Thabo Mokoni, we have worked so hard to make sure that in every local municipality, we've got a that works with all associations to an extent that information can flow quickly. And it's one of those things that we believe should be taken to the whole country. Colleagues, having said all of these things, we speak as business and we have said to each other, we are going to rebuild. We are committed to do whatever it takes to get back to where we were and even to outshine that. At times when things like this happen, it gives us an opportunity to build even better. Of course, we wouldn't have wished for this to happen, but now that it has happened, we are encouraging each other to build better. We commit to work with government, we commit to work with the communities, we commit to work with all the associations to make sure that we can rebuild our economy. We are busy looking at the weak points, or what we call the weaker area of the chain, to make sure that we can rebuild. But we're also looking into which other expertise that we didn't have that we must now incorporate, because we need to make sure that we build better. We also appreciate the fact that the government is talking about a number of efforts, including the Indaba. It's something that we want to participate and make sure that we get our people back into work. In a nutshell, Program Director, we have been affected. We are at pains, but we are not discouraged. We are standing up, but we will definitely need to reevaluate the relationship between government and private sector, so that in future we are able to respond quickly to things like this. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, President, for those words of support and also highlighting and diagnosing where the problem is. I guess you did a brilliant job by doing that. I think it's very crucial that we should be able to understand as Limpopo that as much as we tend to think we were not affected directly, but indirectly we were affected greatly so, because the coastal, most of the supply chain things, and we transport lots of goods via roads. And because of that, if things are not going well, it means we are so we thank you very much, and of course the MEC for also Jalani has said to include us as the BMF and the Chamber of Commerce to be part of the mining industry that we're about to host, that we should be able to help and assist with all the expertise that we have as the BMF as well as the chambers. With this opportunity, I want to now start to introduce our next speaker. I want for you to be able to prepare questions that you are going to write them now, so that I can just put them aside, and I should also know by the time is the time for Q&A. It's just easy for me to go through those questions and read them to any other one of the panelists who's here. I would like to introduce the next speaker, which is SA2. Okay, SA2, over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Hey, Chair, I lost you for a second there and I wasn't sure whether it was my network or yours. So can I just confirm that I am audible?
Yes, you are very audible. I can hear you properly.
Okay, fantastic. The president of the Limpopo Commerce and Industry, the members of the Limpopo Chamber of Business, the acting HOD, all the government officials, the president of the BMF, members of the BMF, and all the guests who have joined us this evening. Thank you for joining us on a Friday evening. So I think because I'm a CA, as mentioned by the chair, I got allocated the topic counting the costs. So I will attempt to do that this evening. I feel very sad that Dr. Mike Nguna wasn't here, because when I was preparing for the webinar, I found a video of him being interviewed by Sakina and Leanne Manas the other day. And he was saying how that his father had 10 wives, so he can handle being interviewed by just 2 women. That's nothing for him because his father had 10 wives. And I was going to say to him, him and I are similar, because today I am the only lady with 5 gentlemen who I'm sharing the panel with. So I'm sad that he's not here, because I wanted to give him that, that message, and to say after today, I fully support the concept of polyandry. It feels good to be the rose among. So someone must pass that message to him. Colleagues, so my topic is really about, elevating and highlighting the cost of what transpired last week. But I think it would be remiss of me not to add my voice to say, but what were the root causes of what transpired last week, where we saw the protests, the looting, and the violence. So what originally began as what seemed to be politically motivated quickly was fueled by, yes, there were rogue elements and criminal elements and all of that, but I think also then poverty really, and the inequality that we face as a society. It sparked something which has been bubbling under the surface for a very long time, and then it quickly turned into that, whereas it had started as something which we had initially viewed as politically motivated. So this inequality gap has only widened as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, as more South Africans have fallen below the poverty line. So as the numbers person that was called today, according to the 2020 United Nations Human Development Report, 1 in 5 South Africans lives on less than 28 Rand a day. So colleagues, I really want to implore you to think of living on 28 Rands a day. Some of us, we pass by the coffee shop on the way to the office, and that costs us 35 Rand every day, and we don't blink an eyelid. This situation is expected to worsen. The inequality is expected to worsen. And then more than 2 million South Africans lost their jobs last year in 2020 as a result of the pandemic. So we're saying what is the cost of what happened last week? But there was already a very heavy societal cost, which was brought on by our structural inequality and poverty and unemployment, and then COVID had already added fuel to the fire. So this was just a perfect storm that was just waiting to erupt. Whilst there were mischievous lootings of things like Samsung flat screens that I would also like in my house, by the way, and electronics. But what we saw the bulk being looted was basic food items like cooking oil, like you would see umama carrying a bag of, or looting a bag of imili meal, and just absolute basic foodstuffs. And if that doesn't tell you the issues of survival that South Africans are facing, if that doesn't bring into stark reality that people are facing real issues of survival, then I don't know what will. When I watch the people who were looting, 100,000 sofas, I know South Africans, we always find a little bit of humor in everything, and I think today has been very serious. But I think colleagues will remember there was a blue sofa. I don't know how much it cost, but I definitely can't afford it. And it was looted from a shop, and now it was sitting outside an informal settlement because it couldn't fit inside the home of the looter. And so South Africans obviously are very humorous people, and that was circulating. But if you look deeper, you basically see that is a person who has been so economically excluded that they could never even hope or dream of ever acquiring or even working their way into a position of acquiring such a position. So they were simply just trying to get a taste of this economic ability and mobility and freedom, and what it would feel like to walk into a shop and buy a sofa for 100,000 rand. That's really what was happening. Even though, yes, it was quite humorous, but if you look at the core, there are people who have just been at the outskirts of the economy for so long, watching others being able to gain economic ability, and I think they also took an opportunity to say, I actually wonder what it would feel like to sit on a sofa that costs something like 100,000 rand. And I mean, they watch some segments of the economy rush to buy these items every November when it's Black Friday. I mean, Black Friday, people queue to buy the absolutely most expensive luxury items. And there are people who would, when given an opportunity to loot, they would loot a bag of mealie meal and a 5-liter or a 2-liter of cooking oil. So you just see really that this situation was, and I think we keep saying it, but really it was just a fire waiting to be sparked. So this reminded me of a saying that is often said by one of our BMF past presidents. He's also the chair of Bidvest, Professor Bonang Mohale, and he always says, way before there was looting, years before what happened last week, that you cannot continue to be an island of prosperity in a sea of poverty. It's not sustainable. One day, that sea of poverty is going to engulf that island of prosperity, and that's what we saw happen. So getting back to the numbers, what really has the cost of the riots been? Well, some businesses may take years to be rebuilt, according to some industry groups. And I think my colleagues, Ubabo Albert, mentioned that as well, that this is your career, this is your livelihood. It's not just your job that you've lost. And it's not even just about saying, here's money, rebuild your warehouse or rebuild your store. You know, it's so much deeper than that. And how do we even put that cost into numbers? In KZN and Gauteng, KZN and then Gauteng, which is South Africa's economic hub, those were the hardest hit provinces by the violence, and they make up about half of the country's national GDP and almost half of the country's population. The port of Durban handles 70% of the country's imports and is a gateway to Southern Africa. So when that port had to be shut down, including the N3 route, where a lot of freight and cargo is used, where the trucks use that route quite a bit, you can just imagine the cost of that being shut down for about a week. It is currently difficult to assess what the total cost was, but estimates are saying north of about 20 billion in KZN, and a total cost of about 50 billion in the country itself. And this is quite a significant percentage, colleagues, of the country's entire GDP. The biggest loss, apart from the loss of lives, is the loss of jobs that many will incur because their places of work no longer exist. And it will take time to rebuild those places of work. I actually remember during COVID, there was a big issue with one of the insurers who were disputing whether businesses were insured against something like a global pandemic. And I'm pretty sure that even businesses who are insured, they are busy now with lawyers and insurers just trying to make sure and read through the fine print and check whether they are actually insured against things like looting and violence and political violence, because we all know you can find that somewhere in the small fine print at the bottom, there was an exclusion to that effect. So those jobs are not going to be recovered anytime soon. The biggest lesson learned, colleagues, is that all of our existences are directly linked to the survival of all of humanity. So once again, as I come to an end, just to emphasize and to repeat and end with the quote by Professor Bonang, we cannot continue to be islands of prosperity in a sea of poverty. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, my leader. Thank you very much, SC2, for dissecting the costs, because then it's always nice to quantify, because if you don't quantify, it's very difficult for us to actually know the impact of these riots. And sometimes when we're sitting down, and I'm glad that you did not only touch the issue of the cost, because we also needed to look at the qualitative factors that also contributed to that, which we touched the issue of poverty there. Whether are we saying every other person, we know that is a criminal activity, but with the poverty that has been there for some time, it might have been one of the reasons that might led to us to reach that particular situation. I would like to go to the last speaker of tonight. By the way, SC2, let me just apologize on behalf of Tankuna. He gave me a call to one of his malls, agently so. So he needed to quickly just rush there, because he's one of that is one of the reasons why we invited him, because most of his malls were looted, so he was affected so greatly, and he wanted to be part of this particular engagement so that he can be able to give us his experience and how much cost he has lost in terms of whatever it is that is happened. So he apologized so much so he could not even send somebody in short notice. But I would. Yeah, so we'll take the message to him though, as you said. Can I take this opportunity and introduce the next speaker? So the next speaker is Mr. Sbusi Sonduna. So Mr. Sbusi Sonduna is an astute, experienced and qualified chartered accountant who has 12 years experience starting and leading and managing strategic business units, teams and companies in challenging and diverse environment. Throughout his period, he has managed to gain a lot of professional skills. He possesses strong entrepreneurial flair, having founded 2 companies, namely On Point Advisory to 2016 and Tornado Financial Services in 2013. He currently works in both companies as a chief executive officer and managing director, respectively. The company specializes in servicing entities that are distressed public entities, retirement funds. He holds a Bachelor of Business Science honors degree specializing in accounting and finance from the University of Cape Town. He has 12 years post-article services experience, having completed his articles at professional services firm Deloitte. Post-articles, he was promoted to the position of audit manager within the financial services unit. Subsequently joined the consulting division of Deloitte, where he was outsourced to public sector clients to act in financial management and chief financial officer roles. He has structured a number of financial departments who had previously obtained unfavorable audit outcomes through organizations redesigned and enhancement of financial policies and implementation of new controls. He has managed to successfully turn those organizations around to obtain favorable audit outcomes. Mr. Nduna, sir, thank you very much for this colorful bio. Would you please help us in dissecting the last topic, please?
Thank you, Program Director. I felt like my entire life was being read out in front of the whole world. But thank you, Program Director, and good evening to everybody that is here to join us today. Mine is to give just words of support in terms of the investor confidence, the impact that the looting has had on the investor confidence. And I mean, it is without a doubt that the damage has been severe and extensive. I mean, SC2 has outlined the losses that we have suffered as a result of the unrest. A preliminary survey had indicated around 10,200 jobs were potentially going to be lost because of the civil unrest. So the situation is quite dire. But for investor confidence, what gives me a little bit of hope is that we can all see that the government is working tirelessly and overtime to address the fears of the investors. I mean, two departments, the DTIC, the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, and small businesses, both are working together in dealing with the damage that the unrest had caused. And they've got plans, and part of those plans are to reach out to the investors themselves, and also the business sectors, both formal and informal, to communicate with them and to alleviate their fears. And one such case that has happened in the last week is that, or I think earlier this week, is that Toyota, the car manufacturing company, had reached out to local authorities outlining the damage that their company has suffered within the KZN region and the losses that they've suffered. And Ibrahim Patel went to go speak to them directly, and then they reportedly again said that they're satisfied with how the government has responded to their cry, and that they're more at ease. So we are seeing that the government is working hard to restore the investor confidence. So I'm quite hopeful in that regard. But out of those businesses that were affected, not to say it is anything, not to say that the impact is not severe. No, impact is severe, but there is mitigation. There's a survey that was conducted that demonstrated that 60% of those businesses that were affected were insured. So they will be able to then lodge claims to the insurance companies, and they will be compensated for their loss. Again, two departments, the two departments are helping the small entities who've been affected to expedite their insurance claims. So again, there is support there in lodging those claims and in expediting them, with the relevant insurers. So again, that's also something that should ease investor confidence. But yeah, 43% of the businesses, again, to appease investors, say that they'll be able to go back to their normal operations within less than a year, while 7% is saying, within less than a month. So 43% of the businesses say they can restore the normal operations within a month, and 7% are saying that they won't be able to recover, not within the first 12 months or within the ensuing 12 months. So not all is doom and gloom. There is hope. Government is on board. The private sector is on board. Insurance entities are, they are also on board. People are of the view that whenever insurance companies need to pay, they always find an excuse. I find that the environment and the climate that we're in is that even those insurance companies are also willing to help, to restore order into the economy and subsequently then, and consequently then, to restore investor confidence. Thank you, Program Director.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ntona. I think now I'm calling assigning very well as compared to initially. On the program, this is the time where we summarize and as well as we do the overview of all the speakers. And I've seen one question already is there. But let me just do a little bit of summary. The MEC alluded to the fact that it is not right under any circumstances to think that war is not a crime. In the same breath, I say it is not right to loot and cause riots, regardless of the justification that can be put forward. What is exciting is that our provincial government acknowledges that the unrest have far-reaching consequences, even if our infrastructure was not vandalized and they are hitting the ground running to ensure that the businesses are assisted. So Mr. Jaleni identified the riots brought to us the following in a following way: financial impact, as well as the psychological impact. Now, the psychological impact on entrepreneurs does not only end with them. The tremendous amount of psychological impact is also felt by employees, those who lost their jobs and those who experienced riots firsthand. He also identified that this could be due to lack of collaboration between government and business, and doing things differently could be a solution and a preventative measure. Now, Ms. Esetu, our only rose in a panel, said economic exclusion was diagnosed as what contributed to the cause of the looting. Again, if we do inclusion as opposed to exclusion economically, we can be able to prevent situations like this in the future. Another impact was loss of lives, and this is a difficult one because lost lives cannot be regained. To sum up the TED Talk, I would like to say, let us rather be a sea of prosperity and not otherwise. Mr. Nduna then said, what is good is that businesses are positive that they will be able to recover and continue with their business activities. I hear that businesses are positive that they will recover. But panel, what about those small businesses that do not have insurances? Can we talk about that before we dive to Q&A? What about those businesses that are small? I remember the other day I was listening to Radio 2000 and they were interviewing Lucky Lukwati. Lucky Lukwati is a small entrepreneur who was a soccer star who started the restaurant somewhere there in Soweto, and it was looted. And what he was saying when they interviewed him is that as he had about 4 months in business, and he didn't even plan to have an insurance at that time. He thought maybe he would work a little bit and he would be able to raise money to go and insure. He lost everything, as in everything, and he doesn't even have money remaining to spare to start the business again and be recovered. So I want the panel to be able to assist us there to say, what do we say about those small businesses that do not have the insurances like the other big corporates that have at least a latitude of them being able to have an insurance that can be able to assist them there and there. So this is the summary that, that I have put in place. But I would like to take this opportunity to read Paul Hueta's question to the panel. We were well aware that the riots and looting were mostly concentrated in Gauteng and KZN province. And poverty-stricken provinces did not experience such riot. Could there be another reason than poverty that led to this behavior? Could I be able to get one of the panelists to be able to assist us with this, Mr. Jaleni? Oh, Mr. Swisi, so because you're already here, can you jump to it, please?
No, I'm not responding to Paul's question. I don't think that was. I don't think I'm the right person to answer that question. I thought some of the question that you were summarizing were relating. I thought maybe I could be able to answer, but okay. Yes. So what about those businesses that do not have insurance? That's a very, very good question. And I don't think anybody has got a proper answer, a proper practical answer. All I can say is that the government does have COVID-19, sorry, not COVID-19, they do have specific relief measures, specifically tailored or emanating out of the civil unrest. I know that the Minister of Finance just the other day was outlining an economic recovery plan, allocating a number of billions set aside to assist those small businesses without insurance. Things like the UIF, the temporary, the temporary, the TERS scheme. Businesses will be able to sort relief there as well, those that can't claim to pay out their employees. But I do know that there are a number of opportunities created by the government that small businesses could tap into. But practically and deep down, there will be some businesses who are just not going to recover. Unfortunately, not every business that's been affected is going to recover, whether they tap into the relief measures and tap into whatever assistance that is provided. It's going to be a matter of those that can be saved, which is rather unfortunate, but it is a situation that we are faced with today.
Missy, I'm going to give you an opportunity to answer.
Thanks very much. We will all agree that we were all watching when all these things happen. Anybody who cares would have watched where it's painful is that if we were to take the narrative of the so-called white monopoly capital to say that we are fighting, as South Africans, we are fighting white monopoly capital. And what transpired in that week, it was that black excellence was reversed. I know I saw a lady, she had 2 pharmacists, his pharmacy, and she was, if you remember that morning when she was collecting her medicine, and she said she doesn't even have an insurance. The business of Mike Nkuna was looted. We immediately, as a province, the Premier convened a meeting. We had a cabinet meeting. We went all over to say not in our names. Business South Africa, the president is leading with the reconstruction and rebuilding of businesses, which mainly is black people who are actually affected. They don't even have insurance. And as government, we need to come to the part. You know, the issue of TERS, the issue of UIF, the issue of SIRA. Even those people that don't have insurance, I think what we need to do is we need to bring those people together, and the small business department must assist them. Because in South Africa, it's not about resources, it's how do we deploy those resources. Like we may say that in Limpopo, what I know is that there was only 1 taxi and 1 bus which were banned. But in the long run, if you remember, all the trucks were stuck in the Beit Bridge. If you remember what happened. And the supply chain industry was disrupted, that some businesses for some time could not get their supplies. And with this cyber attack, it actually exacerbated their problem. I'm just saying that, you know, Njelene, when you called me, I was asking, but why must I go and talk about, I must go to that meeting. I was looking at how many people are participating here. But the little contribution that we are making to say, what is it that we have to do? The lady of the BMF, she says, our commitment is Black excellence. What can we do as Africans and as Black people to turn around the situation? Where we are turning around the situation, we are destroying everything that we have. And it starts here, this small talk. I guess just to say from here, when we see a mall of the North, or a mall in Twandu, or a mall in Guyana, or a mall wherever, or we see a clinic, who does that clinic belong to? My first lesson is that even if that mall was built by Mulman, a white person, but that mall, it's our mall. If you remember, we were chasing taxi people from the malls. I went to meet with them in Tefluak. I had a picture with them where they were saying, Mura, Orore, Reba Fishite Molo, but Warena, Renata, Banavara Nova. I think we had an attitude towards taxi people. I think it's, don't you think that, Njelene, that we must have a meeting with taxi people ourselves and say to them, thank you very much. Because for me, is that Black excellence, we need to support them and get subsidies and what they deserve and start. And we have seen that they are a resource. So for me, it's where we are, is that we just need to hold each other's hand, government, business, communities, and this talk, we must make it a point that we take it to other regions. Not, you know, from here you spoke at the provincial level. What you need to do, you must make it to the regional meeting, so that we must bring everybody to the front to say, never, this thing should not happen. And you know, I can tell you that we are the first generation who liberated South Africa, and we are the ones who have to protect this constitution. And it has happened when we're still alive. So I'm just saying, for me, that's what we need to do. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, MSC, for that contribution. Mr. Jeleni, would you like to tackle the question of Mr. Paul Kweta that has to do with, is there any other reason except poverty that I might have contributed towards this?
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I think what tends to happen, particularly with riots, they may start with one reason. And if we were to ask some of the people who actually went to steal, really their reasons are different. I remember listening to one lady, you know, she says, I was at home, I was watching on the news, and somebody just came to us and said, you guys are just sitting at home, everybody is taking for free, free lunch. So really, there are a number of things that would have influenced people to work on the looting. On the one hand, there is the extreme we classify outright as criminal activity, and there's some of the people who would have moved with the hype. But I do not believe, particularly when we look at the nature of strikes before, I do not believe that whether poverty or anything that might be there, except criminal intent, South Africa is at the point where it was necessary to go and loot. If we were to compare South Africa and other maybe African countries when it comes to social grants and the reliefs that were given, I wouldn't want to believe that poverty was at the level that would have pushed us there. But that being the case, I think it's also necessary really to look into, say it was poverty, to say what is it that we can do more to get into that. But personally, I do not believe that that would have been one of the reasons. We are not yet there in South Africa where poverty can push us to that level. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jaleni. I would like to read the other question of Kutlwano. It's based on the assessment, the riots were also influenced by racism, tribalism, and area-based. What can be done to promote harmony amongst us, eliminate alliances on the basis of race, tribe, etc.? Mr. Nduna, would you like to tackle this? Ms. Esetu? Mr. Nduna, can you hear me?
Can you please repeat that, Program Director?
Okay, thank you very much. The Kutlwano is saying, based on the assessment and the riots were also influenced by racism, tribalism, and area-based, what can be done to promote harmony amongst us and eliminate alliances on the basis of race and tribe, etc.?
Thank you for that question, Program Director. Program Director, you can ask that question to different people. They'll give you different opinions. And I can only answer just based on my opinion. As long as there is inequality and hunger, and certain groups are perceived to be more privileged, whether it's white, whether it's Indians, and certain groups are perceived to be poor. The question of racism has been there for years. The question of poverty has been there for years. As long as those socioeconomic factors are not thoroughly dealt with by government and decisive action is taken, I think that question will still be asked in the near future. So what can be done to promote harmony? Let's address the inequalities. Let's address the social ills that are currently prevalent in our country.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Nduna, for that. Let me read the other question of Hauta Mutaun. Hauta Mutaun is talking about South African Special Risk Insurance Association. I'm not sure what he wants to achieve about this or what he wants to ask about this. Maybe he will just clarify further. Let me just go to the other question. I think government's response to rioting was clumsy. What can be learned from this, from happening in the future? Is Ms. Esetu here? Maybe you can be able to assist us with this question.
Chair, I think on the oh, there you go. Okay.
I mean, obviously, Chair, since the looting and the violence, we've seen, the Ministry of Intelligence basically saying to the police ministry, we gave you the intelligence, and the police ministry saying, we never received the intelligence that you gave. And also, I think the way it was very clear that the police were very overwhelmed, especially when at the height of the week. Look, a lot of people have been talking about cabinet reshuffles, etc. I think that, you know, the president just needs to look at the security cluster, how it is supposed to strategically integrate together to, firstly, to preempt. Because if we've got a Ministry of Intelligence, surely we should have known that something like this was coming. And surely the police should have then been able to respond adequately. But we saw that that failed quite dismally. So really, you know, it's a matter of reflection for the president. He's been put under a lot of pressure this week to answer whether he's going to reshuffle his cabinet or not. Look, it shouldn't be about personalities, but it should be about capability. And it should be about preventing something like this from ever happening again. Sure, we could say that this was unprecedented, but you would think that, you know, from Americana, one would have learned about such situations. I must say, though, in the government's defense, you know, when this started during the week at Nkandla, and people were asking, why are the police not, why are they not, you know, firing rubber bullets and et cetera, And I remember Minister Bekicele saying, there were people who were armed there, civilians who were armed, or part of the rioters who were armed. If police shot at the civilians, or there was a shootout, there were going to be women and there were going to be children who were going to be killed, and we were going to have another Marikana on their hands. So for that, I did really think that was well thought through. However, we really saw a failure of the whole security cluster to preempt firstly, but also to respond really as the week went by. We saw days and days and days of this going on, and they just seemed hamstrung to really respond. So politically, definitely we need to look at our security cluster, our intelligence, our police ministry, whether it needs new ministers or whether it just needs capacitation, training. I'm really not sure. I don't want to be too critical of government. I don't know if the answer is a cabinet reshuffle, but definitely I would agree that our response was really, really lacking. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see the MEC, you raised the hand. Would you be able to jump in? Honorable MEC?
Yes. If you listen to the president yesterday, he called for calm. If all of us as South Africans, we can be sober for a moment. If you follow that, the whole thing, when they said the police are overwhelmed, when people were looting at the mall, there were thousands of people. Just imagine when the police arrived there, what jamboree would it have been? I think we all have, everybody has accepted that government was slow in reacting. And I think for me, the lessons that we should actually learn is that what are the causes of this problem? For instance, nobody talks about Limpopo. Nobody talks about the Eastern Cape. Nobody talks about Northwest. For instance, all of us, we just descended to those chaotic situations. But if we could have looked at what other people, remember, it's always government which has to be blamed. But where government has done well, for instance, our premier was literally leading from the front. The cluster, the police were actually telling us what is actually happening. So for me is that it's fine. The security cluster might have slipped. People are calling for reshuffle. But what are the lessons that we have learned? If you look at business South Africa, what did they say? I'm sure it's Busiso who spoke about how the business South Africa has reacted. Yesterday, I listened to is it the president or chairman of Anglo-American, who said we need to support President Ramaphosa in rebuilding. Toyota South Africa came to the picture. People are saying that we are going to rebuild this country. And even before we get paid from the insurance, I think for me, that's the correct message that we're actually taking. We saw people in the morning who were saying that never again should this thing happen. People were protecting. If you remember that young man who protected Maponya Mall, and when you talk about intelligence, what does it mean? It means ourselves as people of South Africa. When I was a young person, I said to you, I joined the Youth League when I was 13 years. When I was a young person, we could defend our communities against vigilante. We need to change because we must wake up. And people said no. Even those people who were killed in Phoenix, remember, there are agent provocateurs who want South Africa to ban. And it can only be us who protect this thing. So I'm saying that indeed, government must accept where it has made mistakes. And we must say, these are the things that we should have done. And we must learn from it and build from there. Remember, our democracy is only 25 years old. And some of the things that is happening is lessons for the future. We will be able to build around those things. There will be sacrifices that are made, whether bad or not bad. Like the quotation that I made to say that as long as we don't understand that what war can cost to us is a problem. If people were to look at what happened in Africa, in certain countries in Africa, where people were fighting and what was the cost of that, and that people never thought that those things can happen in South Africa. And these are the things that we need to deal with. So for me is that I'm happy that all of us will say, let's not criticize so much, but let's offer solution to the problem that we have. The issue of poverty. Remember, we have inequality. Thank you very much. Sure.
Thank you. Let me see. I wish I can take more questions, but I think we have reached towards the end of our program. As in closing, I would like to thank our guest speakers being able to share the light in the topic as we requested. I'm really humbled and convey my sincere gratitude to you all. MEC, we acknowledge how difficult it is to steal you from your busy schedule. And MEC, there is one comment that I also want to say that one of the audience said it is, I really support in fact, it's like Marshall says, I really support the suggestion of our MEC to say taxi industry must be supported. We really appreciate that, and I think we are also concurring with Lucky by doing that. We appreciate your time, and it proves that the government is willing to collaborate with the business community. Mr. Jaleni and Mr. Nduna and Ms. Esetu, we appreciate your time and well-planned presentations. And to the audience, thank you very much for being part of this business talk. On a Friday, it's not easy because it's a weekend starts today. So we really thank you for being part of this business talk. This brings us to the end of this talk. And I would like to take this opportunity and thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody, and have a good weekend.
Thank you, Chair.
All right. Thank you very much.